Congress is facing a major time crunch before funding lapses for the entire Department of Homeland Security at the end of this week. And there are no signs that Republicans and Democrats are anywhere close to a deal. Senate Democrats did release a draft legislation over the weekend that includes their wish list of immigration reforms to ICE and Border Patrol in exchange for funding DHS. And party leadership is not budging from those demands. They include targeted operations, no masks for agents, an end to racial profiling practices, among other things. Republicans and the White House have said that there is room for negotiations, but they've called some of the Democratic Party's demands, quote, ridiculous and non-starters. Joining me now is NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Melanie Zanona and NBC News senior Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley. Mel, let's start with you. Lawmakers are making their way back to the Hill this afternoon after a long weekend. What are you hearing about a deal coming together before Friday? Is it even possible?
Well, a lot of pieces would have to fall into place in order for a deal to come together by Friday. But, Ryan, there have been some signs of movement because over the weekend, Senate Democrats did formally give their legislative proposal to Senate Republicans, reiterating some of those demands that you laid out there. And notably, our colleague Julie Sirkin reports that a White House official says that they're not ruling anything out and that while some of those demands are more challenging, other demands are actually worth discussing. But at this point, those negotiations are only taking place at the staff level. It would probably take the principals, including President Trump, getting involved to actually clinch a deal. And meanwhile, GOP leader John Thune saying today that Republicans have their own list of demands, are intending to offer a counterproposal. So there's still a long ways to go before they actually reach a deal.
A long ways to go, Mel, and a tale as old as time on Capitol Hill, because there isn't a lot of time. I mean, is there any way they can get this done before Friday? And is there any willingness to do a short-term stopgap bill to give more time for them to negotiate?
Even if they reach a deal in principle by Friday, it's almost impossible that they would be able to pass it through both the Senate and the House. That would just be a huge undertaking. But if there is some good faith negotiations going on, Democrats might be willing to support a short gap spending bill. It just depends on how long it would be. Certainly, that's something Republicans are going to try to pass regardless because the clock is ticking. And this agency, Department of Homeland Security, a critical agency that is set to shut down at Friday at midnight.
Okay, Mel, let's turn now to Julia for more on her side of all of this. And Julia, I want to turn to the reporting that you did for your upcoming book, Undue Process, about the Trump administration's deportation program. You interviewed the White House Border Czar Tom Homan over the summer, where he forewarned about the fallout we've been seeing over Minneapolis. What did he tell you?
That's right, Ryan. When I spoke with Tom Homan on June 16th, we had no idea the position he would be in now, taking over from Greg Bovino in Minneapolis after the Trump administration's tough tactics ended, of course, in the fatal shooting of 2 U.S. citizens. And what he said then really explains a lot about his tactics now and was a warning sign that was not heeded up until those fatal shootings. What he said to me is, I think the vast majority of the American people think criminal illegal aliens need to leave. And if we stick to that prioritization, I think we keep the faith of the American people. Ryan, he said this in many different iterations over the course of our interview that day. That was just as the operations that really began to sweep immigrants in Home Depot parking lots, the Garment District of L.A. began. And he was saying that he thought that people would have more room to complain. He was worried about losing the faith of the American people. And he said that they needed to focus on their operations targeted on people who had committed crimes. And this was just as this other strategy to do this real broad sweeps of places that Greg Bovino was leading had really come into power and into favor by the administration. Now we've seen a switch, and Homan is trying to put the genie back in the bottle and chart this new course. Of course, it's in the aftermath of these 2 shootings and as those negotiations really ratchet up in intensity on the Hill.
And you've also been reporting that ICE is plowing ahead with plans to build and buy mega warehouses to keep detained immigrants. How does that fit with these targeted operations?
Well, exactly right. It seems that why would they be spending all of this money on mega warehouses that could hold as many as 8,000 immigrants? For context, the country's largest federal prisons hold 4,000. So that would double that amount. But we know that they've already taken contractors out to these warehouses. They were built to be Amazon warehouses. There's one right there in Surprise, Arizona. And they've also gone to places that were built to be server farms, these huge warehouses that are sitting empty across the country. ICE wants to do something unusual, and they want the government to buy these and have them run by contractors. Previously, contractors acquire the space, and they make sure that it's outfitted and the security can be provided and that they can staff it. So a lot of contractors we've spoken to, as well as members of Congress, including Republican Senator Roger Wicker, who is concerned about a facility in Mississippi, they say that this could be really unsafe because they wouldn't be able to staff these to the adequate ratios they would need to safely and humanely run an ICE detention center. It also shows there's more money coming. They're putting a lot of money toward this. And of course, they have a lot from the One Big Beautiful Bill and from previous appropriations. But it shows that perhaps a real winding down of this sweeping policy might not be coming anytime soon.
Okay, Mel and Julia, thank you to both of you. We appreciate it.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.